Looks like we have everyone. Okay, we do have a quorum. It is after 7, so I'm going to go ahead and call to order this regular meeting of the Ridgefield Board of Education for Monday, February 28th. If everyone can please take yourselves off of mute and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. We are already streaming. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of
the United States of America,
To the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. Welcome everyone back from February break. I hope everybody had a great and safe time. I hope everybody enjoyed having this extra week this year. The first time for Ridgefield to have this in quite some time. And we've come back to a post-mandate world. I'm hoping that Dr. Dasilva tells us how everything went today. I did not heard anything other than good news. We did get a little bit of updated guidance from the CDC on Friday, which did include removing the mandate for on bus mask wearing, as well as giving municipalities low, medium, high numbers to look at when determining their own measures going forward. So that's a little bit of a help that I know a lot of communities were looking for. And we're happy that that did come out. Better late than never. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Dasilva.
Thank you, Jonathan. First off, I'd like to just take a moment to let those in Ukraine and Russia know that they are in our thoughts, in our prayers. For families and for faculty, we will be sending out some supports that they can use to help guide their students in the classroom and or guide their children at home. Again, our thoughts and prayers are both with Ukraine and the people of Russia. That said, I welcome everyone back. I hope everyone had a nice February break. This is our first year with February break. And while I'd like to take some credit for the happiness that happened this week, it was really the board that felt that it was equally important to A, have a break for families, but B, what we were noticing, if you remember, was some attendance issues during that extension, because it was a little bit of 1 week and the other. And oftentimes we saw snow days. And to avoid both of those things, plus give families time to spend with their families and or their friends, this was the first time that we had February break, and the feedback has been incredibly positive from everyone. Plus, we got to avoid an early morning Friday call. While our offices were open and many faculty members came in a little bit later in the morning, we didn't have to worry about letting our students know that they didn't need to come to school. So that was a plus. I want to acknowledge Dawn Norton. I don't know, there she is in the red jacket tonight, as today is our last Board of Education meeting with Dawn. For those of you that were listening, we just appointed a new finance director. I've been very fortunate. I know that my colleagues share this in partnering with Dawn over the past 2 years. She has been an incredibly hard worker, thoughtful. There wasn't a moment that I couldn't contact Dawn in the 2 years that I've been here, brand new rookie superintendent. She went through that book a number of times over. So anyone who's new and wants some advice on that book, Dawn, you have 5 more days with her. And then she's off into the sunset for a little bit. So I just want to publicly thank Dawn for all her hard work. It's not an easy job, but you've done it well and professionally and have worked hard. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
So some of you were on holiday last week, but Corey Gillette was not. And she was in her office working hard. So you will hear more, families will hear more about Summer Bridge. It's coming. It will be here sooner than later, right, Corey?
Summer Bridge extension this year. We're extending Bridge.
Oliver, you hear that? We're extending Bridge. So Summer Bridge extension, we will get that save the date out to families as soon as we possibly can. But that wasn't the only thing that Corey's department was working on. Families will soon hear about supports that they will have for their children before school, after school, and even virtually in some cases in the evening for our middle school students. So that will be coming out to families very soon. Remember, that was one of our goals with our ESSER funds, was to provide our students with extra academic and in some cases emotional support. And sometimes that's just being part of an academic support system. And we'll get that communication out to families and exactly what I would expect from the curriculum department. I saw the invitation earlier today and it was very nice and inviting. So you can expect to hear more from Corey and her team, but it was not a quiet week for Corey, although she was very excited that she got to eat lunch, which it doesn't really happen on a day-to-day basis. So thanks again to the curriculum department. As you mentioned, Jonathan, we went to mask optional today. We received additional guidance from the CDC on Friday that allowed for mask optional on public school buses. And it also, again, provided additional guidance about when to shift over to possible mask wearing. I imagine that the Department of Public Health may provide something further or additional information. But either way, that's something that our team will discuss on tomorrow morning and then again on Wednesday morning, and then our steering committee with our health director and our medical advisor as well. I checked in with all of our principals, with the exception of one. I wasn't able to get her, but if the pattern was the same, children did very well today. So they were, high school kids did very well. They were excited, as you might imagine, but at the same time, what they really were was respectful to choice. And that was one of the things that was the most important for us. That doesn't mean that there wasn't a moment or two when someone might say something to another student about a mask, although that's not what's been reported to us. But overall, kids were kind, they were empathetic. Same with our faculty and our staff, and really being sure that every child knew that their whatever choice they made was welcomed and encouraged. And that resonated through all of our schools, like I said, with the exception of one elementary school that I didn't speak to today. If the pattern was consistent, I imagine that it was about the same there too. So I think there was for sure at the secondary level, a level of enthusiasm for students, in particular at the high school, but also an acknowledgement that it's a student and a family choice. And so that went well. Again, we'll probably communicate out after Wednesday. Families can expect to hear on Friday. Just on that point of communication, naturally we were on break, but I think families, just so that you know, when communication comes quickly, we try not to communicate without thinking things through. So sometimes, like for example, the mask optional on the buses that came out, I think on Friday, in order to really give something thought, it doesn't mean that you're going to get a communication on Friday an hour later. It might mean that you're going to have to hang on a little bit. And I also think it's important that families know what to expect when it comes to communication. So on Fridays, they know that we communicate consistently at some point Friday. Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later, but it happens on Friday. And if something happens over the weekend, families can expect to hear on Sundays, so that there's a consistency there, and also gives us time to process the information that we're receiving and being thoughtful in the way in which we communicate it to families. So I think that is all I have to say for today. And our agenda is a little bit shorter today, but filled with good content around the district priorities.
Great, thank you for that. We're going to move on to committee chair reports, and then I will circle back to comments from the public, which I had skipped because that's new at the beginning of these meetings. So let's go ahead and hear from our committee chairs. I believe we had strategic planning, Tina.
Yes. let me pull up because I have 3 reports. So I'm going to pull up the right one. Okay, so the strategic committee met, I think, as a new group just recently, and we reviewed our scope, all the work done so far, so that we were all up to date. Dawn provided a transportation update, which she will be sharing during the district priorities today to the full board. We are working on establishing our long-term or big overarching goals, and that may include possible equity in all school times. And this will, of course, be dependent on what the board or the community at large may feel. But also, I think I need to highlight that we are in the process of negotiations for transportation. So it's all, right now we can't talk about it. So we are looking for more input for that. For the shorter term and more immediate goals, which we highlighted, we were looking into the feeder patterns for both the middle schools. I think it's been mentioned multiple times by the Scottsridge building leadership that the population at Scottsridge, which is at 50% today, they're not able to handle it. Scottsridge, for everybody who's new or is listening in for the first time, was built to handle 40% of the middle school population. And we redistricted a few years ago. And so there is a 50-50 split between Eastridge and Scottsridge. So we are looking to make that more equitable so that Scottsridge is able to manage their capacity well. That is our more focused short-term goal, and we hope to get it resolved sooner. We should have an update at our next strategic meeting, and then we can bring it to the full board as needed. Jonathan, I have also RC CASA and Energy Task Force. Should I do that now or wait?
Go ahead and do those, then we'll circle back.
RC CASA was quick, very quick meeting. The JRV just gave a quick review, provided a brief update how they're doing and how it works well. For the Energy Task Force, that was my first meeting. Their goal is to identify areas that the Energy Task Force can be proactive and make capital improvements that are focused on health, safety, and reduced energy costs and usage. They highlighted the fact they are doing a comprehensive energy audit at 2 schools, which includes one of them includes the high school and 2 municipal buildings. They're also looking to see, or if possible, request for some ARPA funds for addition of some ventilation system to one of the elementaries, but they're still working on it. So we should have more information when they present to the Board of Selectmen. I think tomorrow or day after, whenever the Board of Selectmen meeting is. Okay, I think I covered all.
Thank you, Tina. Other committee chairs, we did have budget, Ken?
Yeah, we had budget about an hour and 13 minutes ago is when it started. And it was as Susie mentioned, it was the last one that Dawn is going to be participating in. So it's a little bittersweet. But we did go through the financial report as well as the current transfers, and we'll be discussing both of those later tonight.
Thank you, Ken. Any other chair or liaison reports for this evening? Sean.
We did have a very productive Ridgefield Prevention Council meeting. What was it, 2 weeks ago. March is Gambling Awareness Month, so keep your eyes open for Prevention Council material and posts about that. April is going to be Alcohol Awareness Month, so there will be some things happening during that month as well. And they're also working on project graduation for the graduation party to be part of that event. That's it.
Thank you, Sean. Any other liaison reports for tonight? No. Okay, thank you. Before we move on to the minutes, just checking back for early comments from the public. Rachel, do we have anybody signed up for early comments?
Yes. So Jonathan, we didn't as of the start of the meeting, but we do have 2 people now. So go to public comment for those 2 attendees.
Let's take them, yeah.
Okay. So just as a kind reminder, I'll call your name and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your full name and your address. Lynn?
No response, Rachel.
Okay. Catherine?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking my question. My question is in regards to what the new quarantine policy will be for those students that may be returning to school after having COVID during that 6 to 10 day period. And so my question is for especially those that are unvaccinated, which may be more of the preschool students. And my question is during that 6 to 10 days, if they have the choice or the ability to come back, how will those students remain separated and masked during that 6 to 10 day period, with the difficulty of obviously enforcing masking, and just questions of how that relates now with our new policy and how that doesn't relate to being able to do the screen and stay in the same level. Thank you for taking my question. And again, it's Catherine White, and I'm at 628 North Salem Road.
Thank you, Catherine.
Dr. Dasilva, maybe you can have Erin Crook circle back.
I will definitely do that, Jonathan, and we'll communicate out to everyone what our practices will be. They actually don't shift much from where they were, but days 6 through 10 at least. But that said, we will communicate that and have somebody reach out directly to Catherine.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to approval of the January 22nd minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of January 22nd, 2022.
Thank you, Rachel. Do I have a second? Sean? Any corrections or adjustments to these minutes? I didn't have any, did anyone? There being none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from January 22nd, 2022, please raise your hands. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Minutes are approved. Next up, we're going to move on to discussion items, starting with district priorities.
All right, so in a moment, John Mansfield will share the document that the board has in its entirety. John, I'm going to have you move to page 3. But just to give the board, and actually this is probably good to share with all the new board members, as the district priorities. And in fact, you might notice that the Board of Ed goals on this document don't reflect the current Board of Ed goals, because these were written slightly before the Board of Ed adopted new goals. That said, they actually did contribute to the conversation that the Board of Education had around developing their goals. So you'll actually notice something around teacher recruitment that Karen will speak to in a little bit, but there is a connection between the current board goals and the district priorities. They really are the high leverage work that we're doing across departments. And so each of us will speak to and really a winter update. We'll have John click on just a few of the documents that are already integrated into the presentation today. I would encourage board members, if you have this document electronically or actually the public, you can click on the links so that you can see all of the documents. It's Good Friday night reading. We will certainly share a few. What they do though is it's high leverage work. It's connected to our long range planning, the Board of Education committee work, the work that we see in school leadership teams, the communication relative to our town and our community members. And so today we'll just, again, it'll be brief, but we'll highlight where we are so far. And then you're also going to hear a final update in the spring. And hopefully by that time, we've either achieved the goal of the priority or the outcome of the priority, and or if it's a priority that we've outlined that crosses over a number of years, and we'll tell you where the status is. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Corey, who will communicate where we are with teaching and learning. You can see on the document what the priority is. We won't read word by word. I don't think that'll be helpful and probably keep you here a little bit long, but we will certainly highlight some of the things that matter most.
Okay, great. Happy to lead off. So our overarching priority has to do with creating equitable and aligned experiences for all our students. So the first action step that we've continued to work on all fall is to create the systems and structures to support this. And one of the biggest ways that we're supporting that alignment is through the creation and continued usage of our teacher-facing curriculum website. We know that it's not so hard to make a really pretty website and to attach documents to it. But what makes this work challenging is to create a website that teachers return to again and again to get their curriculum materials, a website that they find useful and relevant and purposeful. So if John, if you could just quickly click on the website. So this is our curriculum website that houses all of the department's materials. If you can go to elementary, pre-K5, and then go to kindergarten, you can see as John scrolls down, for a kindergarten teacher who teaches across multiple content areas, we have reading, writing, math, all of that curriculum is outlined here on the website for them. This was created by teachers for teachers with the curriculum department. And you can also see different assessments, units, keep going. So we have, oh, there you are, math and integrated studies. So that's just an example of what different teachers across the district are looking at when they're using this website. So we can go back. So we're going to continue doing that work. And even further, specifically, we've started to really dig into the work with 612 health and PE. So we have had a few presentations on content areas. We've shared the K-12 work of the music department. You've heard from the world language department, and then you've heard about the K-12 writing work that we've done. The last Board of Ed meeting, we had an opportunity to share the work that we've done in other departments, including the art department. And our professional learning days, including last Friday before break, have supported these. John, can you click real quick on that professional learning day link there? Thank you. Sorry about my dogs. So this is an example of what it looks like to teachers when we have a district-wide all-day professional learning. So across all the different content areas, there are different agendas for teachers with focus points. So if you look at 612 humanities, maybe 6-8 ELA, click on that agenda real quick. You can see the breakdown of their day, what they're working on. They did a lot of data analysis work on that day. Thank you. So we can go back to the priorities. All right, so continuing down, that was our collaborative work examples. Another thing that we've continued to work on is our study and calibration of our MTSS system. That's our process that supports intervention and enrichment, K-9. We've continued to work on our common assessment calendars. We've made updates. We've made a few slight changes with universal screeners. We've made sure to observe MTSS meetings across K-8, and then continue to work on the alignment of what that algebra lab looks like in 9th grade in connection to the work in math support in 8th grade. Thank you. So another big goal that you've heard a lot about has to do with the different curriculum resources. So not curriculum changes, but curriculum resources that we're using across the district. And there have been areas across the district that needed to undergo a study, the Collaborative Action Team, which you've heard a lot about, the CAT, of different resources because it was time for a change, and in some places time for alignment. So you've heard a lot about the phonics CAT and the math CAT. And in addition to that, not just studying for new resources, we've also invested time in making sure that we're fully utilizing the digital resources that we do currently have in place. So an example of that is the work that the 6-8 math team did with their digital resource that's currently in place, just making sure that we're maximizing all the tools that we have to support teaching and learning. Okay, continuing on. really, we wanted to make sure that our parents in our community were engaged in the work that we're doing in our schools, because that is one thing that we continue to learn and learn again, is that we can't over communicate all of the good work that's happening in our schools. Specifically, we just had, as a curriculum department, 4 parent workshop presentations that were done on our new YouTube channel that Wes helped us set up, and John Mansfield, who's right here. And so these are shared in our curriculum newsletter. We just had our winter newsletter come out for all our families. We continue to update our parent website, which is on the curriculum page. And again, the curriculum workshops that we ran for parents were a great success. So we were able to interact with parents and have it virtual and have it live on the site so parents can continue to go back and watch it if they missed it. Okay. So another thing that's been really exciting to work on as we've been evaluating our different digital systems, and Wes is also part of this with the team, is trying to find a digital warehouse system that can hold all of our student data and display it in a way that's useful for teaching and learning, and can support especially our MTSS process, but also our students who need enrichment. And we are not quite sure yet, but we have interviewed our 4th provider, and we're pretty excited about the work that we think that this provider can do for us, along with the talented team that we have in our district right now. So that's something that we're going to share as we get closer to a resolution around a digital data warehouse, which is absolutely essential for teaching and learning. And then, speaking of essentials, we continue to study our essentials K-12. We talked a lot about it at the last meeting, and we're going to continue to do that, looking at opening up pathways and growing our programming along the way. So that was just a little update on all the work that we've been doing in the curriculum department. And I believe that Dr. DeSantis is going to follow me with less dog barking, I think.
Yes. Hopefully there won't be some other power tool in the background. This update is going to mirror a little bit of the things I said during my budget presentation, but as of right now, 1-to-1 is running incredibly well on all 3 levels. Elementary, we have K-3 classroom Chromebooks. That has been a big success. Parents, I've met with PTA members and just general members in the community. They really like that way that we then give them their actual 1-to-1 Chromebooks in 4th grade and 5th grade. Then, of course, middle school, they've been doing it for a very long time, so that's fine. And then doing the either use a classroom or your own Chromebook given to them by the district, or your own device, BYOD at the high school, has been a big help. We are now ready for testing. So the high school has all the extra Chromebooks that's needed for SATs and GSS, AP testing. That's all set up, ready to go. Same with the elementary level and at the middle school level. And, we're just hoping that as we get further into the budget process, that we're able to keep the fidelity of 1-to-1 in the district. John, if you just want to move down a little bit. Thank you so much. We are currently about 70% done with the touchscreen update of all the classrooms. Now, this doesn't mean that all the classrooms are fully updated. As you saw in my previous presentation, we still need to go through and replace many old desktops, but we are about 70% of way through getting rid of the older decommissioned smart boards with the newer ViewSonic touchscreens, which of course come with a lot of positives. But I did kind of allude to this in one of my previous Board of Ed meetings. We did get kind of thrown a curveball this year. I think most municipalities in Connecticut did, and that was the insurance brokers basically said we can't get security insurance or cybersecurity insurance unless we have something called multi-factor authentication. We have looked at many different products. We've settled on one. We are actually onboarding it to our servers tomorrow, and then we'll begin the long journey of figuring out which hardware token we're going to use, how we're going to implement multi-factor authentication, develop PD that's going to go out to the teachers, and actually all staff members are going to have to interact with this. So it's not just teachers, it's everyone that works for the district. Thankfully, students don't have to do it because they don't have access to any sensitive data, but it will be a new dynamic that we're going to have to deal with. And I'm sure people who work in certain businesses, they're all kind of dealing with this issue right now. John, if you just want to scroll down a little bit more. Thank you so much. So I did talk about thinking about creating a committee. That really didn't happen this year, just for the sheer fact of we're still kind of rebuilding the tech, and it's hard to have a committee if we don't know what opportunities we'll have in the future. But as you saw in my previous presentation to the board, considering the budget, I've met with every building leader and leaders within the buildings. So teacher leaders, department heads, and we've created a pretty extensive roadmap of how to go in the next 2 years. And I'm hoping next year, if we figure out that technology has the capacity to start doing some innovative things, then we'll definitely get that committee off the ground. We're also still in the early stages of understanding how a career technical education, or CTE program, can be implemented at the high school level. We have all the pieces, but I'm working really closely with the curriculum department of how we can kind of stitch that together into more cohesive pathways. That's still in the early stages. You also might have noticed I made a comment last time about how we delayed starting up video production by a year, and this is because of budget constraints, and that's a pretty straightforward story, which I have talked about before, so that's where we're at with that. Also, we are using this year as a unique opportunity for us to work with the library media specialist. So right now, we kind of shot technology out of a cannon at everyone because of COVID. And now we are a one-to-one district. And one of the big things that Corey and I want to push out to all the schools, and hopefully our teacher leaders, and then of course our students will be getting disseminated from, is digital citizenship. What does that mean? Our children are digital natives. They've grown up with technology, but are they good digital citizens? And this is where we're starting to lay the foundations of understanding, like, what should digital citizenship curriculum look like? Kindergarten, second grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. And we've had a really successful PD day with the library media specialists about a week and a half ago. It went really well. We're starting to lay out the groundworks where we think are the guiding posts where we should start teaching certain lessons in what is a digital footprint? What does it mean to have your digital self out there? What are the positive decisions that you can make in being a digital citizen? And those are kind of the things we're working on in terms of the curricular side of digital citizenship. And I'd like to say it's one of the few times now I'm really feeling like we're being proactive. I wouldn't be surprised if the state of Connecticut starts giving down certain digital citizenship curricular guideposts in their own literature. And I think we're getting ahead of the curve. But like with COVID, everyone just kind of got lightninged into technology very quickly. And I'm glad to see the curriculum department working with technology so well to get this new content out there.
Right. Okay, so back to me. So of course, we want to make sure that our schools are welcoming to our students and that our students feel like they belong. And as a part of figuring this out, we have a committee right now which is studying the implementation of all of the different programs that we're currently using to support social and emotional learning. So that would be programs like Responsive Classroom or tools like Ruler. So we're going to look across all of our schools at all the different levels and really study what implementation happened in the past, at what level are we implemented, how much are people using these tools. And that's going to set us up for a discussion about determining, how do we determine, after we understand the level of implementation, how well those tools are working. So are we back to another survey? What's best practices around really discovering how effective these tools are, and what perhaps could be other tools, opportunities, programs, if we don't feel like these tools are sufficient. So that's where we are with that. And our innovation committee is just finally getting started. We are looking for volunteers, and we actually put this out on our winter newsletter. We're looking for volunteers, both from parents, and we have district-wide volunteers. to work on a subcommittee of the Innovation Committee around art and art programming K-12. What we want to see is what do other programs, highly regarded art programs, K-12 art programs, what do they have? What programming do they have? What are their pathways? And also we want to study them and professional development organizations for K-12 art. Who are the best professional development organizations for art instruction K-12? So that's just coming out, and we'll be starting probably in the next month or so.
All right. Jonathan, do you want us to stop there? Take any questions for Corey before we move to special ed and pupil services?
Sure. Let's see if anybody has questions now. Sean.
First of all, good work. There's a lot of impressive work behind the scenes on this. The one that glaring omission that I was looking for and didn't see, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, is learning loss. We've got a tremendous amount of 2 years of learning loss here, and I don't see it called out specifically. While it may be threaded through everything we just read, it seems to me it really deserves its own little corner and effort underneath this, but I'm open to being completely wrong about any and all of that.
I do think you're right, Sean, I know you're right, that it is woven in, and that is part of the work around our MTSS process, all of our professional learning days. Part of the data analysis work that happened on Fridays directly related to learning loss and seeing where students are and how we need to adjust moving forward. So you're right that it's not one bullet, but it is definitely at the top of our page as we are working with our teachers across the year.
And I think one of the highlights that you communicated, Corey, was around the department. I think it was the English department that you clicked on their agenda, just happenstance.
Yep.
And that was work around NWEA, Sean, which is our universal screener that we use, and the work that they were doing to analyze those results. As a result of that is where Corey and her team have identified opportunities for students. Again, at the elementary and middle school, families will be hearing shortly where they could have additional support in the academic areas.
Yes, the tutoring that we're offering at the elementary level and at the middle school level, in addition to the regular day.
Okay, I get it. I'm very goal and results oriented, and if it's not there, I can't measure against it. It doesn't. While it may be threaded through everything I just read, I've got nothing actionable I can pin to that and say, hey, we're achieving, X amount against learning loss. And it's challenging for me.
I think one of the ways in which you will be able to see, my hope obviously is progress, Sean, is in the fall, as we do each year, our team comes back and provides an opportunity for the Board of Education and the public to see where our growth is, quantitatively, obviously, and qualitatively as well. And so the work that's happening throughout the year and in different capacities, and certainly the extra support that we're providing for students, our goal is to see that growth. And I think that that's one very tangible way in which you can see it. You may also remember that when we presented this fall, you actually asked for additional presentation on our students, our more high achieving students, let's just say, and where they were. And so this will be an opportunity over the course of a year to come back to you in the fall and share out what that actually looked like. So that is very tangible and outcome based, while perhaps not direct in a bullet that says students will go from A to B. It's there for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Other questions? Rachel. Then Amy.
I just wanted to say I'm really beyond appreciative of the phenomenal work that Ms. Gillette and the curriculum team have done. I really value our teachers and their expertise, their input, their time. This really creates a transparency of how our budget is supporting all learners and where we need to go, as well as Dr. DeSantis's update on technology needs in and out of the classroom. I mean, these are part of the whys of why we need budget support. So thank you so much.
Well said. Amy, and then Tina.
I love the idea of reaching out to the community for input with the art program. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that, and also how you anticipate reporting back to the board and to the public in general about what's going on with art.
Okay, so in the winter newsletter, we asked parents to join, to volunteer for two different opportunities. One was a celebration committee, because we need a lot of help in celebrating student art. So literally hanging up student art for elementary art shows, because that's a lot of kids in a building that need their art hung up and celebrated, and also helping us bring student art into the community. And we're going to also start partnering with our new partners and making that happen. So that's one way we're looking for parent help. So the second way that we're looking for a few parent volunteers is to join our innovation committee around art K-12. So we're looking to study other well-known K-12 programs and look at what makes them such high quality art programs and what their pathways are, just so that we can start, as we're building ours and finishing our needs assessment, we can start creating a map for what we want our programming to look like. And that is so important and needs to be done in concert with the best people in the field to provide professional development to our art teachers. So that's going to be part of that study as well. I think that those were the questions.
Yeah, I think the only part that you may have missed, Corey, and you asked Amy, is how do we communicate that out to the board? And there's multiple ways in which we do that. Some of which you've already seen with world language and music right, and in other presentations. So that's one way. The other part of this that I think is important is this, and sometimes that you can't let the perfect get in front of the great, or in the way of the great or the good. And I think one of the things that we recognize is sometimes you need to multiple things need to happen at the same time. And so I can speak for Corey, I believe on this point, is that we've learned a lot over the past just 2 months around the talent, and not just from our faculty, but quite frankly, our families. And tapping into that right now as part of a subcommittee for the Forward Thinking Committee is just smart, because it's relevant and it's right here at our fingertips. And that's one of the reasons that we're moving forward on a different lane, while at the same time working towards a greater goal.
Gina, and then Selena.
I just want to echo Rachel's comment. I think it's great, all the work you're doing, but I also think it's so important that you highlight this, because it leads to the tangibles, right? When you build this project budget and we present to the community, we are talking about real stuff. We're talking about real innovation. We're looking at things, broader lens, closely. Teachers are part of this conversation. And I've always said this, I am not a teacher. I do not know this stuff. I've got to trust our experts when they talk about it, and go through all. I think it's so important that we're doing that, because the more we talk about that, the more we highlight, and the more people understand how we build our budget and why there are critical areas of need. I think it's great that you're addressing art. I know that for whatever reasons, you are the experts again. There is a feeling that art has been taken away. The fact that you're holistically looking into it and you're involving parents in this, for me, I think it's a great idea. You're involving community, you're willing to learn. It's a partnership. And I think I go back to this statement that we're looking at stuff community. We're looking at community input. So it's not something you're doing in a silo behind closed doors. We're building relationships. So I really commend you on that. I also want to really highlight that I love that you're talking about social emotional learning and how that looks, what it means, because we keep talking about social emotional learning, right? We talk about responsive classrooms, or we talk about ruler. What does it mean to a kid? Does it really promote inclusion? Does it not promote inclusion? Is it just big words we are using? And I think I appreciate, and I really love the idea that you have a plan, that you put into it, you have action, you have outcomes to it, because I know as a parent, I hear all these words. I've been very involved with Ruler at Scouts Ridge because of Mr. Salem. I know how the outflow happened, but I also think parents need to understand, is it truly happening? When we talk about responsive classroom, what does it mean for a child? What does it mean for a child who's just moving in? Because we have to look at our community or school community holistically. And I have to, Wes, I do agree, what is citizenship? I think it's so great. I think it totally speaks to all kids because it looks very different to a 10-year-old versus my 15-year-old who totally thinks he knows everything. So I do appreciate it. And so I go back to that. I love these goals. I love that you're putting it cohesively. I love that are outcomes that we can follow as a board, and then we can look at it and look at, outcomes for that. So, and I go back to this. I think Rachel says it, we have to trust our teachers, and I do. But we are also here to ask the questions. So whenever the timeline comes, I will have questions. I think Jonathan knows I will have a billion of those sometimes. So thank you. Thank you for all of it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. If I can add on, Wes shared the work that we've been doing with the library media specialist, and that is part of our goal around the essentials as well. That is a job that has changed in lightning speed, especially in Ridgefield over the last couple of years. So there's so much more to that role than managing physical books. And they absolutely manage our tech. They are the tech on the ground people. And then in addition to that, there's curriculum that goes along with being a responsible user of technology. So I think Wes did a really nice job articulating what that work is entailing and how we are working together K-12 to really develop further that role to support, to do the heavy lift that team does, K-12 really for us.
Thank you. Selena, do you have a question?
I just had a quick question, and I echo what Tina says too, because I don't think that you can handle learning loss if you're not dealing with the social emotional aspect, right? Because if you're not healthy socially and emotionally, you can't deal with the learning loss. So my hats are off to both of you. So I just wanted to ask you, art-wise, you have teachers also assisting you with this, right? I just want to.
Absolutely. Yes. Teachers, administrators, and parents will be on the committee. Yep,
okay.
Absolutely.
They've done such a great job. So I just want to make sure that they're giving input into this as well.
Of course.
Thanks for that great presentation. It was actually, it was very helpful. So thanks for that.
Anyone else? Shall we move on?
Okay. Top that, Dr. Hanaway.
Nope, not going to happen. Okay, so just taking a step back, and forgive me for repeating myself for those who have heard it before, but for the sake of some of our new members or public who are tuning in, our district priority for last school year was really thinking ahead towards expanding one of the service models in what we call our continuum of services in special education, and that's the co-teaching model. And what co-teaching is to a general education and special education teacher really sharing the entire instructional process, which starts with co-assessing, co-planning, which is really a robust process of deciding upon their roles in strategic ways, depending on the makeup of the class and the group and the needs. And then going back to co-assessing and doing that cycle all over again. So that's a typical instructional cycle, but in a co-teaching model, you really do it collaboratively, and you're both bringing, I think a very watered down way to say it is typically like the general ed teacher brings their content knowledge and the special education teacher brings their knowledge of students' disabilities and differentiation models. But that's really kind of passé at this point. They're both playing a pretty symbiotic relationship. And it's a lot more than two teachers teaching in the same room. It's more than two adults cohabitating. It's really about elevating and the instruction for the entire class, and also ensuring that those students with special needs are staying as close to the content and to their peers as possible, and that they don't have to learn in alternate environments. And so our goal last year was really to spend this year running an entire study to get ready at the elementary level to see if we could create a proposal to roll this out over a multi-year period of time. We have co-teaching in the middle school, we have it in the high school, but we don't have it at the elementary school. We have what's called a push-in model, which is a very remediated version of that. And so we felt like what it does is when you add something to a continuum in that way, it actually does more than just provide a new service that wasn't already there. It improves upon the services all around it. So the Learning Center services where students come out for specialized instruction would evolve as a result of co-teaching. Our RISE services would evolve as a result of co-teaching. So would our related services, our speech and language, our psychological services, everything benefits. So it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. However, as we've all experienced through the multitude of updates that I've provided to the board and the town around special education, we had to pause for that to be the focus of our work and really of our budget development this coming year because of the nature of the change in our population. But what we have done is instead of going full bore and saying we're going to institute elementary co-teaching, we've continued to work on expanding our service delivery models, because by hook or by crook with our changing population, it has to happen, because the number of students who we're servicing and the variety of their needs has evolved so dramatically in the last 12 months. So where we are at this point is at the middle and high school levels, we're moving forward with evolving and improving upon the current co-teaching models as they are. We have two right now parallel processes happening within our middle school and our high schools. They have not yet overlapped, but they're going to soon in terms of looking at the effectiveness and the design of our current co-teaching models and working on how to improve upon them. That started with groups of special educators and now is starting to expand to general educators with special educators as well. At the elementary, what we've really taken a step back to do is to say, okay, if we can't move forward with co-teaching right away, can we assess the effectiveness of what our learning center model is, which is essentially the other step on the continuum where these students are being serviced, to see what's effective and what's not. So if we can't implement co-teaching right away, how can we improve upon Learning Center right now to meet all of our student needs so that we're not just kicking the can down the road, we're doing something now? And then how are we collecting information to assess, okay, well, co-teaching isn't a one size fit all. Do we need to start, when we're ready to start multiple years down the road, do we have to start all the way? Can we start in certain grade levels? Can we start in certain content areas? Can we incrementally build up to this? Because I think what's clear to us is that there isn't going to be a convenient time to just rip the Band-Aid off and move to a large scale model for all 6 elementary school grades in 1 year. So those are the two big pieces at the elementary level that we're trying to focus on, is to say, all right, if we have to pause in our larger effort, how can we improve upon the service model that we have right now? And then what is a reasonable rollout approach when we're ready, that not only will meet student needs, but also does it in a planful way? And then at the middle and high school levels, thankfully, because the model already exists, we're not creating something from scratch. We're improving upon what's there. And we've got a lot of feedback that it's time, especially at the high school level, that our co-teaching model evolve. And what we've had the benefit of doing is to collaborate a lot with other local high schools in Fairfield County to understand how they approach a co-teaching model. It's not easy because the content variety at the high school level is so vast that you can't just make a change, a whole scale change, because it'll impact the math department differently than it'll impact the science department. So we're trying to do it in as planful way as possible. But we do feel like we don't have to wait to continue to do this work, because as far as I'm concerned, a robust co-teaching model is imperative for any strong special education department. And if we are able in the next 5 years to get one off the ground for the elementary schools, we would definitely be in the minority within not only Fairfield County, but the state of Connecticut of districts who have really kind of made the commitment to do that. Whether or not it's going to be reasonable for us to do is a different story, but it's definitely still our goal.
Pause for questions. Any questions for Dr. Hanaway? It's too easy.
I think I hit my question quota in like November.
Thank you, Dr. Hanaway.
Thank you.
All right, Joe Moritz.
Yes. So the major action step in my goal really is anchored in this facilities master plan for the district. And the first step there, of course, was to include it in the 5-year capital plan, which the board did elect to pass forward to the next round. So it's critical to this action plan that we do succeed in getting this approved and funded properly. And in dealing with the engineering groups, I feel confident that we've defined a good group of parameters and scope of work. And it will shape the budgets going forward. It will shape the capital budgets going forward, as well as my operating budgets. Also, the collaborative work has begun, and I'm very anxious about the work that we're doing with the town engineering group now. We've really set a lot of clarity in motion as far as shared responsibilities, and work to identify and prioritize the critical infrastructure needs of both my side as well as the town. So that work is underway, and that will continue through the rest of the year. Also, as far as the A school, that's work that continues to happen both on the looking for new space as well as the infrastructure upgrades. So we're continually working on that. And we also have some big plans to upgrade the core HVA system this summer over in that building. And the rest of it basically just depends on the success of the plan and the work that plan produces going forward. So hopefully in the spring, we'll have a positive vote. We'll be able to get that study funded. And then that's when we'll really see the wheels start rolling. That's it.
Any questions for Joe? Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're turning it over to Karen.
Okay, thank you, Susie. So my office has 2 priorities. The first one, as you've seen previously, is to establish systems to create a racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse workforce. So I am pleased that in September, I did send an invitation out to the entire district to solicit membership into a minority educator recruitment advisory committee. We have 26 members across all levels, certified administrators and teachers, all schools, all levels, who join that committee. We have 6 meetings scheduled this year, of which we've already had 4 of them. So our committee, if you will see from our priority, that this is an ongoing priority. It's not meant to be concluded by June. And so in our conversations with our committee is that it's very important to set and really be thoughtful on our core values and beliefs to set the stage for our future work. So we are in the midst of that process, trying to connect our values and beliefs with the vision and of the graduate that's already been established by the Richfield Public Schools. To that end, we have established a strong relationship with CES, and they are helping co-facilitate that work, which has been tremendously valuable to our committee. So we're excited about where we are so far in our process towards meeting the goal to establish this process to increase our diversity in our workforce. Susie, do you want questions, or do you want me to do my second one?
I think you can go through your whole list of priorities, and then we'll stop.
Okay, sure. So the second one was to establish ways to support our Richfield administrators. As you've heard also from me previously, the reason that this is a priority is because we do not have any formal system to do that. It's well established for our teachers, but not for administrators. We have resurrected our administrator evaluation committee, and we also have met 4 times so far this year. I do want to thank Ms. Gillette for co-facilitating those meetings with me. We are well set to be able to present a revised administrative evaluation plan to the Board of Education at the end of the year. As similar with teachers, the administrative evaluation has a comprised of a goal setting and goal process, observation process, and stakeholder feedback process. So we have already made some revisions and recommended revisions to 2 of those. We're right now on the stakeholder feedback process. So I'm excited that we have some inways into that for hopefully a new revised program of evaluation for next year. In addition, we have an initial proposal for how to support our new administrators to the district through a multi-tiered mentoring program. So you will hear more about that, but we have preliminary ideas of how we can support our administrators both in-house and externally when they become new to us in their position. So a lot of good work, and I'm excited about it.
Any questions? Tina?
Thank you, Karen. I'm really, I'm excited to read about the, when you're talking about supporting a racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse workforce. I know that you've outlined a lot, but will there be an update that you'll share to the board? How does it look? Because I think it's very important for parents to understand what this all means, because I'm getting it, but as a board member and as a person of color, I would like to understand how this plays out and how this, we know that the more diverse workforce you have, the more representation a child may see in the teachers and administrators, it really helps. Sorry about my dog barking now. Apparently it's said, you get my question. I
do. So all I'm trying to set the stage is you likely won't hear that this year. So we really have a lot of foundational work that has to be done this year. So that will still happen from March to June. And so then next year, once we really have those foundations set, we want to start with the tangible. I admitted to my group, I'm like a very sequential, very concrete person. I want the plan. Give me the plan. Here's what we do. Here's what we're doing to establish our goals. Here's what we're doing with universities and colleges and recruitment. We can't do that this year. We have to step back and really, as I said, establish those core beliefs and values, because whatever strategies we put into place, if those aren't established and are firm, it's not going to work. So my belief is that it's actually going to be next year that you're going to see, here's our plan and why and what it means for the Ridgefield Public Schools.
Thank you. I do appreciate the honesty. I really do. It makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah, it took a couple meetings to say slow down to go forward.
Yes, and it's a big topic. It's not simple to pin down what it means in different ethnicities and linguistically. It's just a big, comprehensive. The fact that thank you for admitting that. I think it really helps people understand that you're truly doing the work, just not saying the words. I think that's important too.
Yeah, we're trying.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Turn it over to Dawn.
Okay, well, my priority was to study the district's transportation practices to determine if there are opportunities for cost optimization. This is a topic that the board has discussed numerous times and is a very important topic for the budget or for the strategic planning committee and their goals. So one of the areas that we've determined is important in order to determine if there are any optimization cost effectiveness for transportation is to look at the students who may have, or the parents who may choose to opt out of transportation altogether. We did run a parent survey to find out if any parents would be interested in opting out of ridership transportation. There were 873 respondents to our survey, but only 126 of them said that they would be willing to say, yes, we will opt out of transportation and not need a bus ride or a bus seat in the current year. In taking that detail, we look at where those students are in what grade, what school, and we were able to pull that detail together and sent that off to Edulog so that they could log that into into the system to look at what buses may be or may not be affected by the ridership review that we have done. That detail is still being compiled and being looked at. The next step that we have in our review of that is to ask Edulog to continue to look at the ridership as well as any conditions that we have with Richfield that are specific to us, such as our road conditions, distance travels, current 4 tiers that we have, and our current policies, and to come back to us with some suggestions or recommendations on fleet size, what other considerations they may have for us for cost optimization. And that's where we are with this project.
Questions for Dawn? Tina, your hand is up.
I'm sorry. I just want to highlight, because I know Don mentioned it, the strategic committee too, right? Out of the that even if we ask parents to opt out, there's a law that says that we do have. I think it's important that parents hear that too, because it's a conversation that comes up. So I think if you could just share that.
Sure. We are required by the state of Connecticut to offer a seat on a bus or a ride for every student in the district. So that said, if they do opt out and they choose to come back in, we still have to route them and we have to put them on a bus somewhere. One of the other factors that we have to take into consideration is our all hazards. And if there is an emergency situation, do we have enough buses to transport all students at that particular time? So there's a lot of different factors that have to go into the decision. I don't think in my mind that there's going to be an optimization of reducing bus or fleet size, but there look at maybe time between, reducing the hours that we have on the buses, reducing the time that the students are on the buses, different areas like that that might save some funds.
Thank you, Don. I just thought it was important that we share that information because it's just knowledge and people should know this. The community should hear this. So thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a reality to that as well, in that even if let's just say we had enough families where that opted not to take the bus, and we did find savings, should any of those families need to come back in, we have to provide the service, within a reasonable time frame, 24 or 48 hours. But if we don't have the buses in order to do that, it complicates things pretty significantly. The other piece is it complicates it for financially, but it also complicates it for families that are already routed, right? So every time we add another route, it impacts the child's arrival and or their arrival to school or their drop off at home. And so I know Dawn's dealing with it now in absence of a transportation director the past month and a half. It is not easy for families because some families are really tight on their schedules. They have to be at work by blank amount of time. And so they're already so tight. Any shifts from the known is complicated. And the service that families have been receiving is what they're used to. And I think we really need to think about that very carefully before we make a shift like that.
Any other questions?
Okay, so I'm going to speak to the last 3 priorities, even though they really do touch upon my colleagues and their work. The first priority is maintaining and further developing relationships with the schools and the broader community through consistent, clear communication in multiple modalities. The second, which is to explore opportunities to support working families through morning and afternoon care and report those findings to the Board of Ed. And lastly is to collaborate with community stakeholders to ensure that all of our students are receiving an equitable and accessible experience. So with respect to the first priority, I think that that's something that is always work that we're going to continue to be better at. We do provide as a goal consistent communication and in leveling the expectations for families so they know when the communication is going to happen, what is it going to look like, and who is the target audience, and how we might communicate differently for different audiences, those that know more about the educational structures and perhaps some that may know a little bit less. There's a lot of modalities that we do use. I hope that families are listening to the podcast because I think they're fun. And more importantly, they really do try to provide content in a different way. RPS News is a great resource that provides a real summary of what's happening across the district and highlights the good work of students and the good work of faculty. And quite frankly, oftentimes families and how they're engaging with us. This year, we decided to provide a budget edition. My colleagues, Dr. Hanaway and Corey, are heading off onto what we call a little bit of a roadshow where they'll be providing an update on the budget to community members, again, all in an effort to provide broader communication, clear communication, and really for those that are, I think Tina, you said it earlier, perhaps an executive session, that our families do stand behind our schools, but there's a whole population of families in the community or people in the community that don't know what's happening in the school. So how can we communicate to those individuals as well? And so we try our best. We can always get better, but we will continue to do that along different stakeholders. The next one, the next priority, which you're going to hear more about, is exploring the opportunities to support working families through morning or afternoon care. This has for sure been an issue for our families. It's not just our late elementary schools, but certainly that has been an area of focus. Linda Johnson, who's not here tonight, partnering with Corey Gillette, have done a lot of research since the start of the year. So even though the Board of Education hasn't heard about it yet, trust me when I tell you this has not been a study that just happened this past month. It has been ongoing. The Board of Education will have a presentation on April 25th. There's a survey going out. I was wrong to say I thought it went out last week, but it's going out on March 1st. Ready to go out to families. I know, Corey. Ready to go out to families, really gauging from the parents' point of view what their wants and or needs are, in hopes for us to be able to identify what program is best. This likely will not, or definitely will not be a no cost program for families. Hopefully it is a low cost program for families, but more importantly, an option for families. And that's what we've heard over the course of the year and a half that I've been here, is that there's just nothing available, or there's things that are available for some schools, but not for others. And so hopefully we'll have some options for families, or at least one that's viable. And I'm hopeful that families will take that on. All right, John, I'll have you scroll down. A work in progress, but certainly I think we have seen progress, which is to collaborate around providing an equitable and accessible learning experience for our students. And that's with really community stakeholders. We have a great partnership with our first selectman, who we call Town Jake, but it's really Town Jake Muller, who supports us on the town side. But one of the areas that is a work in progress, I know for the town and for the school system, is around the playgrounds and accessibility around the campus for our students, of course, during the school day, but also, of course, outside of the school day. And accessibility is an area of need. And so one of the starting points is we had Dr. Hanaway, actually Joe was already trained, but Dr. Hanaway and Joe Moritz are both trained in ADA. We've partnered with IHCD, the town, the Board of Education. We've prioritized the list of schools that we believe are essential in terms of moving forward, while at the same time understanding that our PTAs and our families have a partnership in this too. But most importantly, I think what we have done is developed a stronger communication tool with our town partners around ensuring that we have a role as much as they have a role in providing an experience for our children. The reality is our campus and our playgrounds are an extension of the learning experience for kids. So when our children go out to recess, we have to provide an equitable experience, an accessible experience, because that is part of a child's day. And I'm really proud of actually the work that we've done alongside our first selectmen and our partners there. And again, work in progress and will continue to be, but we've made a lot of progress, let's just say. I think alongside that is really developing and working with clear expectations around who's responsible for what. So that's actually, again, we're fortunate. We have great partnerships with Parks and Rec, with the athletics department, but just being sure that we're memorializing who's responsible for what and when, so that we understand what the rules of engagement are, and so that our schools can be and our facilities can be the best that they can be. And we're doing that in a way that continues to foster collaboration in partnering when we can help and when they can help. And so that, again, is ongoing work, but we're certainly progressing towards that. And that's, again, through memorializing expectations, having a chain of command of who's responsible for what and who do they go to when they need help. So I'll take questions on those 3 priorities.
Sean's hand was first.
Yeah, I don't know. That happens every time. So how do I frame this? So I'm a little concerned about our interaction with the community at large. I know that's the first one here. The Friday emails are great. It's a one-way communication where you talk to them. We seem to have somehow sunsetted our outreach committee without so much as a board vote. We're living in a time now where parents want more involvement and more information on their kids' school day than ever before. And I don't feel like we're being that responsive to that. And I feel like it needs to be much more of a two-way conversational activity. And I never felt that the outreach committee, as it was structured, performed that in any measurable way. There's got to be a better way to get parental involvement and input into this process. We can't just have a one-way discussion where we talk to them and nothing happens.
So Sean, I'll speak to that a little bit, and I don't know if Jonathan has anything further, but I think I could speak to it. We're always looking for a two-way partnership. That's just who we are. I think as a learning organization is how can we be better? The reality is that when it comes to the operations of the school district, that it is a two-way communication, and it doesn't necessarily happen in the same way that you might be expecting. In other words, our schools have great relationships with their families and with their PTAs, run a variety of sessions, not just on one topic, on a multitude of topic areas. And I probably could have memorialized that better here, but that is an area of importance for us, and having, our parents connect very directly with their schools around what's happening in their schools. And so there's definitely an ongoing communication there that is two-way. Certainly, I think from a far larger level, let's just say at the superintendent level or the board level, ways in which we communicate, yes, you're absolutely right, is that we do generally provide information, but there are mechanisms in which we receive, and whether that's through email communication, whether that's through public comment at the board level, but we listen and we hear and we make changes as a result, or shifts, or communicate better as a result of the feedback that we receive from families. But it is important to note how much is happening at the school level. Every 9, the 9, really 10 facilities with the alternative high school do have means in which they communicate very directly with families. That doesn't necessarily, Sean, answer the greater question of the community at large. And that may be an area that we can enhance. And certainly, I'm listening to you and taking in that feedback. But when it comes to the parent population, I think we're good.
Yeah, frankly, I'm looking for a communication that is not incident based. Most of what you're talking about is in something happened, Johnny needs help, we're communicating. It's not a two-way communication stream of, hey, we're thinking of this. What do you think of that? Parent input. That's not at all how this appears to be functioning.
Sean, just up from the board level, I'd just jump in and say, while the outreach committee may not have been as effective as it could have been in this earlier incarnation, I'd have to discuss with you how we might want to revise and revisit that going forward.
How did we sunset that without so much as a vote? I guess I'm confused on that.
I don't believe there are votes on the committees, on what committees are requested each year.
We can just make up committees ad hoc for no reason, and voila, we have a new committee.
Not exactly. There are some that are legally required, policy, curriculum, but beyond that, most are just what the board and district administration determine are required or needed. Tina?
Thank you.
So I'm going to go two parts here. The ones the old PTA had. I do know that PTAs do reach out. And Sean, and this is my PTA hat and the fact that I do talk to a lot of the PTA presidents. The PTAs are very instrumental in reaching out and partnering with the schools and talking to parents. I know Kim talks about it, Lynn talks about it. They have events, they talk about social emotional health. I know Ruler was rolled out. So I think that partnership is happening with the PTAs. But I will say that Sean's point that when we look at the larger community, right, as a board, how do we take input? I think there is something we should be looking into. I think it's critical because we always go back to Sean's point, we're always reacting instead of putting forward our message, even the budget. It's so important. That's why I keep saying I'm so glad that we're talking about our district priorities, because when the community listens to it, they have tangibles that they can equate with when we talk about budget numbers. And I think this is so important that as we build relationships, instead of always, reacting to whatever said in X place. And I don't think we have to react to anything on social media. I'm just saying as a board, we should be proactive. I don't know how this looks. I'll leave that to you, Jonathan. We can discuss it as a board, but I do understand Sean's point. But I also want to highlight now, almost 2 years part, the PTA does do an active role, and I think they do sharing that. And I think to that point, I wanted to highlight, Dr. Dasilva, I know you're doing budget workshops with the PTA, right? There's a middle school and a high school. There are two divisions, and I think it's important that the new board members are not part of the PTA should hear that. And I wanted to ask, if you're not a PTA member, can you listen in those? Because I think they used to be great when we used to have them in person from PTA Council. Of course, the world has changed and everything's changed beyond that. So I just wanted to highlight those for anyone who's listening.
So yes, Tina, and actually that is a mechanism that I think is important for the two-way conversation. And it's one that, Sean, many communities have. They may not call it outreach. They may call it brown bag with the PTAs. Naturally, that doesn't necessarily get to the parent population that aren't a part of a PTA per se. But whether you're a part of a PTA or not, you can absolutely attend a brown bag or something of the like. And so that's certainly a consideration that we can talk through. Corey and Liz are doing exactly what you described, Tina, which is really trying to build an understanding to the community at large about the budget and what's happening within the school system. I believe there's a save the date that was already sent out, and it's going to be held at the library in a neutral space. Is that correct?
Yes, on March 7th.
On March 7th at the library.
Sorry, March 8th. March 8th. Sorry.
It's okay.
And anyone's invited to it. You can just turn up, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
The library is helping us. We called the Ridgefield Press. Allison Pratt is going to put it out through social media. So yes.
The PTA sent it, so I did see that. But I think it's great that it's another avenue, because I know years back, and this is again going back to my PTA, I know that we used to go to the Founders Hall and all, right? It's again building outreach, and to Sean's point, I do understand that.
Yeah, I do want to point out, so we reached out to many of places, and we weren't always welcome at this point in the budget process, and perhaps that's because it's just maybe we came out too late. But that's why we ended up at the library, because that was more of a neutral ground, and folks could come if they wanted, but didn't necessarily, have to, let's say, to listen in. And so there is, not for lack of trying, let's just say, from the team in terms of getting out there, but maybe we just need to reflect on our timing and, perhaps get out there a little bit sooner. But we do have a session again, March 8th at the library, open to anyone who would like to come and listen and hear about what's happening in our budget. And yes, the PTAs. But again, just because we have a PTA meeting, you don't necessarily have to be a member of the PTA. You could be a parent that's not a member of the PTA and join that meeting. I'm sure that that's open up to anyone who wants to participate.
Last point, Jonathan, sorry, and then I'll shut up, I promise. I do want to applaud that the fact that you are looking into childcare, because I know, and again, my PTA world comes back for years that I did. I know some PTAs offered it, not childcare, but some kind of before school enrichment, if you will, or after school enrichment. So I am so glad that you're looking into it, because it does help so many parents, as the population changes. So after saying all that, I do want to applaud the really positive thing. And I know how as PTAs we struggled. I know we used to always compare different districts. I know some PTOs were able to do it, and PTAs were restricted in what we can and cannot offer. So my old head wants to really acknowledge that, because we did struggle with that for so many years. So thank you for doing that. I mean, I'm glad that we're doing this. Again, I'm probably jumping ahead from April 25th, but it's not been a small task. And there are some reasons why that is the case, Tina, and why they haven't been offered a program here. And there's lots of logistics that I know the team will be prepared to speak to. This survey that our families will be receiving tomorrow, March 1st, is important, because that really is going to help us understand what we can offer, right? If there's 5 kids that want to participate, that may not be a viable option. Again, I don't want to jump ahead, but there is a reality to that. There's also a reality to commitment. So if you're going to commit and you all of a sudden now have changed your plans, what does that mean financially for any organization that's going to be a part of this and partner with us? So there are some reasons why we haven't had it here. It's not, I'm sure, I can't speak for my predecessors, but my guess is that they probably ran into some of the roadblocks that my team has experienced. That said, I think that we won't stop until we try to sort it through the best that we can, and then we'll have to see where it lands. Agreed. Thank you. I mean, I remember as PTAs, when they used to look for before or after school enrichment, it was commitment, right? It was numbers and how much was fiscally, it was viable or not. So, but I'm just glad the district's doing that instead of, depending, PTAs are run by volunteers and parents. And in the end, it's great that we have a cohesive program, K-5 for all schools. So thank you for that. I'm done. I won't speak anymore. I'll give everybody.
Selena, you're up.
So regarding communication and outreach, I think it needs to be safe to do that. So like if you're going to do outreach and Susie wants to do outreach, or Dr. Hanaway or whatever, they need to feel comfortable, like they can do it and not be bullied on social media. And I feel like we need to give them the opportunity to do that, right? So there needs to be parameters and safeguards, and we need as a board to agree that we're going to let them do that, whatever that is. And I feel like sometimes we don't give people the opportunity to do that. So PTA members and parents and that sort of thing, sometimes they're not willing to speak what they want to, they don't say what they want to say because they're scared, right? And so we either decide we're going to give people the opportunity to do that, or we're not. So when we talk about community outreach, it's kind of funny that we allow bullying on specific sites, and we beat up people who try to like voice their opinions, and then we complain that we don't have enough outreach. So we need to allow people to do that and decide that we're not going to put up with bullying anymore. And I think Tom would agree with me on this for sure. So I think like definitely we need to have some policies in place and some parameters that we're going to stick together as a board and adhere to specific policies and lift each other up, for sure, and promote that. And I hope Sean would agree to that and not allow any more bullying on his sites anymore, on his social media sites. And I think then we would have more outreach.
Sean and then Tina.
Yeah, let's leave the personal attacks aside. I think we're looking to solve a problem that doesn't currently exist. I don't think Susie or Liz are afraid of any conversation with any parent anytime. And I'll reiterate that I think we don't do enough two-way outreach, plain and simple.
There are some parents who will
Thank you.
not say anything because they're so scared. So
Just to clarify, Tina, before I move on to you, Selena, if you're saying that there are parents that are scared to speak to the administration or to the Board of Education?
they're just scared to engage in conversations because
the
they're
board-
scared
at the-
of being attacked on specific issues, like when Rick Lawrence spoke up in support actually of masks, like, you know, I wanted him to come here because I knew that, and they were terrified that they were going to be attacked. And that
Sorry,
should
just to
not
clarify, are
exist.
you saying that people are afraid to speak to the Board of Education or to the
No,
administration or something else?
they're scared that they're going to be attacked by specific friends of Board of Ed members.
Got it. Okay, thanks. Tina, you had something?
Yes, I was just going to add for the PTA. Selena, I've been part of PTA for 7 years. Susie can attest to that. PTA parents ask questions. The PTA presidents ask questions. Susie, you know that. There's no fear there. Hard questions are asked at PTA meetings. I mean, Amy's been part of this just quickly, but council, I will say in defense of the PTA parents and the meetings that we ran as PTA council, hard questions were asked. There have been many hard questions. And I was part of many, little diverse opinions, if you will, PTA meetings where PTA council had past superintendents. So to give, I will give PTA that when we've had, the PTAs had meetings, parents have asked.
There are some questions that are not asked.
Well, I mean, I know from PTA, I think they are. I beg, respectfully disagree. I'm not talking about social media. I don't do that. I'm just talking about PTAs and the fact that when we've had budget sessions, and if you're part of a PTA meetings, if you've sat at PTA meetings, if you've been part of it, you know that I'm serious about this.
PTA mom for a long time. So I'm not
I've
going to
been
argue.
PTA
I'm just
president
saying,
for
if we
7
want,
Okay, thank you.
if we want
Thank
community
you.
outreach, we need to stop with the bullying. And we need to agree as a board, no more bullying on our sites, period. I don't allow it on any sites that I am admin on,
We're not
period.
going to police social media outside of a Board of Education or administration site. Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Dr. Dasilva on the priorities that are presented to us this evening? Rachel.
Hi, so it's just more of a comment. So we did talk about briefly during our retreat about engaging the community. And what I think is a really great outlet and kind of a two-way here is that our meetings, they are open to the public or the community at large. And something that we did discuss that I think could be really beneficial is inviting students to Board of Education meetings to share what's going on in the classroom, what's really important to them, what their passions are, whether it be art or science or STEM, because we are for the children and we definitely want to support all learners in our school district. So that could be a way to engage the community so that they could see what our students are learning, what's going on in the classroom, what our budget dollars are going to. So just a comment. Thank you.
That's a nice comment. Thank you.
I love it. Jonathan, I agree. I've had parents say that. That's a great comment. Thank you, Rachel.
Jonathan, the only piece that I'd add is if there's quite frankly, I will say parents do reach out, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I get it all, as I think most of you know, and sometimes it's really ugly. And while, we do have policies to ensure that folks have decorum when they communicate with the superintendent or the Board of Education in written form or publicly, of course, at a Board of Education meeting. Sometimes, unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way. That said, if there is anyone that is uncomfortable communicating in whatever forum, they can always communicate to us individually. Whether that's Dr. Hanaway, Ms. Gillette, myself, Karen, Dawn, or new Jill, or Joe, they can communicate with us directly. And the Board of Education doesn't actually even see those communications because oftentimes those are operational. So at any time, if they have a question or a concern, I mean, we're always looking for feedback, to Sean's point earlier. And we do have mechanisms in which we communicate that are two-way, but there's always more that we can do. And if that doesn't work for folks because they're not comfortable in that forum, that's why we have other forums in which they can communicate. And the most important one that they need to know is they have their teachers, their principals, and they do have us at central office. And so we're an email or a phone call away. We don't always agree, but we are an email or a phone call away.
Anything else on district priorities before? Ken?
So Jonathan, what would we need to do to reinstate, say, the outreach committee, or whatever we would like to call that as a board?
Well, I think it would just be a matter of the chair and the superintendent determining that it's the right step to take. It's not a board vote on what the committees are, but I certainly would take input from every one of the board members individually. I'd really want to get a better feel for what the expected output of such a committee would be and how it would be helpful to the district. And if that's the right way to go, then I'm certainly open to it myself.
Thank you.
Anything else on priorities before we move on?
No, I think that's it. Unless
Thank you. That was a very thorough look at the priorities. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Moving on to the financial report for January 31st. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education accept the financial report ending January 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Ken? Dawn, you want to take us through?
Absolutely, happy to. There's not a whole lot to report different from last month. One thing that I would like to bring your attention to is that the December filing for the ECR reimbursement has been submitted, and it was just slightly higher than the December submission from last year by $124,803. However, please keep in mind that the threshold for reimbursement is at $97,596 versus 92 from last year. So we are looking at getting approximately the same amount that we did last year, which is below what our budgeted $1.4 million is. So please keep that in mind as we go forward.
Thank you. Any questions on the financials? All those in favor of approving the financial report ending January 31st, please raise your hands. It's unanimous. Thank you. And we can move on to the transfers. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the transfers presented February 28th, 2022.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Ken? Dawn, would you like to take us through the transfers?
Happy to. There are transfers before you, mostly athletics, facilities, technology, and some of the school districts. There are two errors on my report I'd like to just point out so that you know. Under the facilities in January, I have projects Barlow Mountain. It's actually projects from Branchville. So that is Branchville, not Barlow Mountain, of $6,239 that we are looking to transfer to Veterans Park to cover an emergency failed hot water heater. The other area is just below that under facilities as well. I apologize, Joe, I kind of butchered your transfers here. Under building repairs, central office for $1,264. I am missing the exact amount of money on this other side, moving that to Scottsridge Middle School to cover emergency building repairs, which is a heating unit at Scottsridge. Other than that, I didn't know if there were any specific questions for the transfers, or do you want me to go one by one?
We'll take questions from board members if there are any. There being none, all those in favor of approving the transfers, please raise your hands. It's unanimous. Dawn, thank you. It has been a pleasure working with you, and we wish you the best of luck.
Jonathan. Thank you.
Next up, policies, second read for policy 5125.1. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 5125.1, student privacy.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Tom, thank you. Who wants to take us through this? Dr. Dasilva, you brought this to the last meeting, but it was a first read.
Yes, so really, as you know, we are coming back to the policy committee with some of the language around the invasive physical examination and screenings for some additional thought. But this policy was really changed to reflect the changes that we made in the other policies. So you might remember that I had made some changes, had them looked at by our legal counsel, and then brought those to the board. But there was this other policy that did not reflect those same changes. So it now just simply does that. But at the time it was a first read, and there was some question whether or not it was a first read or a second read, so we came back as a second read. So that's why it's here today. It's important that these changes are made, though, because they do reflect the changes on the policy that we've already approved.
Great. Any questions or comments on the policy before us? There being none, all those in favor of approving policy 5125.1, student privacy, please raise your hands. Unanimous, thank you. And now we can move on to the items of information, starting with enrollment.
Hi. So before you have the monthly report for enrollment for February. So in a very typical pattern, you will see there are slight ins and outs from some of our schools, ranging from no change to a high of 5 in our preschool program. That resulted in a net of 10 additional students when we include our 18 to 22 program and our outplacement program, to a total enrollment of 4,617 students as opposed to last month.
Thank you. You want to take us right into the staffing?
Sure. It just, if there's any changes, as you see, every month we present our staffing changes that we receive, even if they're for the end of the year, which will be common as we move through the next couple of months, where people will notice their resignation or retirement in June. But when we receive it, we do post it to you the second board meeting of the month. So if you have any questions about that, let me know, but that is typical that you've seen each month as well.
Jonathan, I did just want to highlight Billy Gramajo is our new transportation director and will be joining us on March 7th. And given the fact that Dawn will be leaving us soon, I couldn't be happier because I don't know exactly how we would navigate without Dawn and or Billy, but Billy is joining us on March 7th. So we're really excited about that. And families, you can remember that name. It's not Susie Dasilva, it's Billy Gramajo.
Terrific. Thank you for those updates. And we can move on to correspondence to the board, starting with public comment. Rachel, do we have anybody for the late version this evening?
We do not. We have 0 attendees, so I will go on now to our correspondence report. We have received 16 emails since our last Board of Education meeting, 1 email regarding public comment, 1 email inquiring the date, place of the next Board of Ed meeting, 1 email sharing feedback on the 214 Board of Ed meeting, 11 emails sharing feedback on the decision to go mask optional, 1 email in support of the budget, and 1 email sharing positive feedback on having a February break. And that is it for this evening.
Thank you, Rachel. And that is it for this evening. We've come to the bottom of, Selena, you have a question?
I do. So I have gotten some questions about the, what Catherine White asked. So Susie, is there any way you could CC me on, or the board on what you, what Aaron says regarding
Yes.
Catherine White, who spoke?
Sure, Selena. So
that was part of my comments about some of the parents are scared to ask questions because of some of the things they've seen on social media. They don't want to get lambasted. They're very concerned. And I'm totally like, I in your camp about what you've done, but they're just a little concerned about, you know, if their kids have special needs or whatever. But because of what they've seen and the backlash they've seen on social media, they're terrified to ask questions. And that
They
was
can go
my,
straight to the administration with those questions. They don't have to ask them on social. I think
they
that's
don't know that the Board of
important.
Ed's not going to see it. And so, you know, they don't understand. Like when I was a parent, I didn't know if the, you know, I didn't know what the procedure was. And they know that Sean is the admin for Ridgefield Matters.
Okay, I'm going to pause.
So-
We're going to stop right there. We are not in a discussion item on the agenda at this moment. Dr. Dasilva did hear that you did need some other people to hear,
Okay.
to see those comments back, so they will get those. But at this point, I will take a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Thanks.
I so move.
Ken, thank you. Do I have a second? Sean, all those in favor of adjourn, please raise your hands.